If you've been watching my show here for a while, you'll know that one of the very first press cars I got since moving to Quebec was the Buick Enclave Avenir. Back in 2018 when we drove it, it was a new vehicle. Fast forward quite a few model years, and we're looking at it again. This, my friends, is a 2023 Buick Enclave Avenir all-wheel drive. Now, the previous model year, the 2022, gets a facelift, which is what you're looking at here. The 23s are essentially a carryover year with a new sport trim for certain models, as well as a new paint color. But for the most part, it's the same vehicle that came out last year. But what has changed? Well, the front and rear end has gotten a pretty updated look to it. In fact, the front grille looks a little bit like what Cadillac is doing now, so you're getting more of a upscale look to this vehicle than it was beforehand. Front headlights have changed. They've actually moved down a little bit now. We're seeing that across the board when it comes to pretty much all of the new SUVs we've been featuring, and a lot of sedans as well. Everybody wants to have the LEDs up top with the actual headlights completely separate. I'm not sure why that design is catching on. Personally, I don't like it, but here we are with yet another one. And then out back, the taillights have been updated. They're now clear instead of the more reddish ones that we saw on the 2018 that we drove, giving this a much cleaner look overall. But for the most part, this is pretty much the same vehicle that we drove a few years back. Now, the price has changed. That's what's interesting. It's gone down about $3,000 since we featured the Enclave Avenir in 2018, which is actually a good thing because inflation has made vehicle prices go up. The fact that there aren't a lot of vehicles out there right now, inventory issues is a serious problem for all the manufacturers across the board. So the fact that GM has been able to bring the price down for this is actually really good. So it's a nice plus there. But it's probably because there isn't much else that's changed. This is still using the same 3.6 liter dual overhead cam V6 that we saw before. Produces 310 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque, as well as the same 9-speed automatic transmission. Now you can get this either front-wheel drive only or all-wheel drive. We've got the all-wheel drive version, and you can select whether or not it's in front-wheel or all-wheel drive. That's one of the things that we really liked about it back when we drove it before, so you can save on fuel. It's nice out. It's finally springtime here in Quebec. I don't need to have all-wheel drive, but if I were to need it, it's just a quick button press away. Now, there's a few things that have also been added to this vehicle, not just the facelift. There's a new forward-facing camera, which is used for some of the safety tech. We also have GM's second-generation video rear-view camera, which they say has better resolution. I can't really tell the difference. Again, it's been 4 years since we drove it last, but it's still pretty functional. There's also an updated HD 360-degree camera system. That is very nice, very crisp images from that system, as well as the next generation parking assistant with this vehicle. Now, one of the changes on the inside is the new electronic gear shifter. Before it was almost like a BMW style shift gear. Now it's a push button, giving you slightly better ergonomics and some better space there. So you'll get used to it pretty quick. I like the buttons on it. There's a wider and larger phone charger, a wireless phone charger that is Qi compatible. It works with my iPhone 12 Plus, something that we don't usually find with these vehicles. And it also has more or less a cooling system underneath it as well. My phone does not get overheated, which it does happen on some other vehicles. But aside from that, the interior is almost exactly what we saw before. I do like the trim on here, the wood trim. It's like an open pore wood now with some textured details on the door cards. I think it's pretty nice overall. And when we look back at how we featured this car back in 2018, there wasn't much that we disliked about it. Two things have been added to this, such as the head-up display. It was something that we were looking forward to, so that's nice that it is there, as well as the navigation system. It has been updated to the most recent system that GM is using across the board. So you still have that same 8-inch system with the Bose audio system with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it just works a little bit better. There's still no side window sunshades on the back seats of this vehicle. That would have been a nice thing to have, but GM has motorized the second row sunshade, whereas before it was a little pull string kind of thing like we have on the front. So that has been another addition for 2022. But aside from that, though, we're going to be spending some time taking this on the road. I want to talk about how the Buick Enclave Avenir might have changed in terms of our opinions, as we have driven a considerable amount of mid-size crossovers in the last 4 years. So is this still a vehicle that we really do like? What you need to know about it and everything else if you're in the market for about $62,000 Canadian and you're looking at a premium mid-size crossover. All right, my friends, we're on the road with the Buick Enclave Avenir. It's a little rainy out today, not too bad. Still going to keep it in front-wheel drive mode. Again, one of the nice pluses of this vehicle is you can select whether or not you're using all-wheel drive or not, which could help with fuel economy, which is a great segue into our first topic. We completed our 100-kilometer test loop in this vehicle in front-wheel drive only mode and touring. There's really only two options, sport and touring. Completed it in 10.5 liters per 100 kilometers. Now, there's not a lot of vehicles in the premium segment. You know, something like the Acura MDX and Infiniti QX60 are great examples of what premium vehicles are, and this was kind of right in the middle when it comes to fuel economy. The Acura did 10.7 liters per 100 kilometers, but that also is a more performance-oriented vehicle, and then the Infiniti did it in 9.7, so not quite as efficient. You're not necessarily buying this because you want fuel efficiency, which brings us to the next point. Why are you going to buy this? Back in 2018 when we drove this, I really liked it. At the same time, I was relatively new at doing newer car stuff, so compared to the classic stuff I was driving, this certainly stood out as a seriously fun car to drive in terms of all the tech and features. But here we are now in 2022. Has that stayed the same? Is this still a vehicle that you should be considering if you're in the market for it? Well, like I mentioned outside, I think it's a good thing that the prices actually come down somehow over the last couple of years, which is good because, you know, realistically, this doesn't offer any unique features over any other mid-size crossover. Yeah, the video rear view mirror is nice, and the 360-degree cameras on here are very good quality, but those aren't really standout features. You want something that kind of pushes you above the rest. And yeah, the Buick has good styling and good comfort. The interior makes sense. It's straightforward. There isn't a whole lot to it, so it works. Is it the most well-equipped in the segment? No. Is it the most affordable? No. Does it have the most power? No. That's one of the things too. You know, we're looking now at essentially the 5th model year for this vehicle, 6th model year going into 2023 now. There hasn't been a whole lot of change. Yeah, the exterior and interior has gotten a slight update, but we're still using the same engine, and realistically 310 horsepower, while it gets the job done when I'm on my own, if you actually had 7 people in this vehicle, might feel a little sluggish. So I'm wondering, is this still going to be a compelling sell for people? We do get essentially almost what the Chinese version of this vehicle has to offer. That's the exterior design. It's still a little different compared to the Chinese market. I'd say that the interior on that is better too. Yeah, the layout here is fine, but the digital climate system is a little bit nicer for the Chinese market, which is a bit of a bummer. Buick is supposed to be an American domestic brand, but we don't get the best of the best when it comes to this vehicle in the domestic market. So bit of a bummer there, but the road comfort is good. The drive is decent enough. Quietness, pretty good. You know, you don't hear too much of the outside world, so everything works very well. And that's the thing. I mean, again, back when we drove this before, it certainly stood out compared to what we had driven up to then. And still, you know, I mean, this is still a good option in the marketplace, especially if you're considering it against something like the Infiniti QX60. I would take this over the Infiniti, even though the Infiniti does have more, is a little bit more powerful and has a little bit more going on for it. But I like the look of this. I like that this is very straightforward. I mean, there's nothing over the top frills about it, and that's what I like. You know, simplicity is almost better in a lot of cases. So there is a lot of good going for the Buick, but again, it just doesn't stand out. It blends in, and I don't think that's the attitude that Buick really wants to have. You know, we talked about it back in 2018 that they were trying to reposition themselves in this marketplace. They wanted to be a brand that younger people could be interested in. And yeah, this still does offer a good amount to it, but there's a lot of strict competition now. So I'll be curious to see how well these sell. I've seen a couple of them on the road so far, but it is still pretty new. You know, the 2022s only came out a little while ago. Now the 23s are starting to come out with very little change, so there's not much difference about that. If you're looking at either one, unless you really need the sport package that comes on the, I believe it's the Essence trim, not the Avenir, then go for that. But for the most part, this is essentially the best that Buick has to offer, and it shows that they do still have a little bit of a ways to go. I think they need to bring it a little bit closer to the Cadillac brand in terms of some of the features. When you go back to watch the video we did before, A few of the small things have been added to this vehicle. As I mentioned, we now have a head-up display. Works out well. We do have an updated infotainment system. It's not the best, but it works. But side window sunshades, that would be a nice thing to have on this vehicle, and some small other details as well. I think it'd be better if the door cards were maybe fully leather. I mean, it's kind of a weird material. It's almost leather. You can feel it's softer, but it's really just the top of the dashboard area. And maybe also the headliner too. I mean, it blends in with this trim, you know, because we've got the white seats, but it would be nice if maybe it were black. It would kind of blend in a little bit better, even with this color. So there's a couple small things that Buick could do, but I just feel that for a facelift, not a whole lot has really changed. You know, you park them side by side, you'll know there's a difference, but yeah, I was expecting a little bit more this late in their production run. You know, I was expecting to see a little bit more than just a tiny facelift and a couple button placement changes. So still a good effort from Buick. If you were in the market for this vehicle to begin with, and you were curious, should you wait up for the facelift? I mean, there's no reason not to. Everything about it is better than the one that we drove before. But is it better compared to the rest? I don't know. Depends on what you're looking at. The Buick I would take in some cases, but there's a lot of competition for mid-size crossovers today, and it is tough. You gotta stand out, and the Buick doesn't quite do that yet. But if you have any questions about this episode of Test Drive, whether it's on the vehicle itself or anything that we do here, please leave a comment below. I do try to get back to everybody that I can. Give a thumbs up to the video if you liked it, and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.